Tech Talk with James. In my last video, I ran through what AWS Landing Zone Accelerator was, how it works on top of Control Tower, or it can work just on a normal organization landing zone, base landing zone, but it's recommended to use AWS Control Tower. Ran through the installation, a few quirks with the installation and the guide, but we got there eventually and we got it installed. Now, since that last video, they have done an update to a new version. It's now running 1.6. Some of the documentation has been updated for installing it and some of the prereqs that are required. So I'd recommend jumping in and having a look at that. But today, now that we've got it installed, up and running, I'm not sure if you remember, but in our last video, we ended up finishing building out all the code pipelines, the installation pipeline, and then we ended up with this code commit repository. So this code commit repository is what holds all the config files, and these config files are what you use to configure all your settings in your landing zone. So it really makes it easy. This is what Landing Zone Accelerator is all about, right? It makes it easy to be able to not have to go deep into code. All you have to do to manage your landing zone is maintain these config files. So I'm going to do my next few videos are going to be looking a little bit deeper on some of these config files. So today I want to concentrate on the accounts and the organization. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through the process of adding an organizational unit and then deploying a new account using the AWS Landing Zone Accelerator. So what I've done to make things a little bit easier is I have actually cloned this repository and connected it to, and set it up in my Visual Studio Code. So we have a look here. Here is the cloned repository, and here are all my YAML files. So I'll be making the config changes here. I'll then be syncing them up to the repository, committing them, and then syncing them up to the repository. So what we'll do is I'm going to, if we have a look at my setup at the moment, let's go into Control Tower. So if we have a look in Control Tower at the moment, I started building out a few other accounts rather than just the base that comes with Control Tower. So if we have a look at organization units, we have the infrastructure one there. Now that is the one that you do need to, if you don't already have it, you do need to enroll it in, create it and enroll it in Control Tower before you do the installation or the deployment of the Landing Zone Accelerator. But I've also gone ahead and configured a shared services and a production OU, and then used the Landing Zone Accelerator to deploy a shared services and a production account within those OUs. So what we'll tackle first, what we're going to do is I want to do a development OU, and I would like to deploy a development account. So we're going to run through the steps to do that with using the Landing Zone Accelerator. Now, with if you've installed Landing Zone Accelerator in conjunction with AWS Control Tower, which we have done here, you need to actually install the, create the OU still through Control Tower. If you're using just the AWS organizations without Control Tower and you've deployed the Landing Zone Accelerator, you can actually add the organization straight to the organization unit, straight to the organization config file, and it would actually trigger the API to go and deploy that. But in this instance, we're going to have to create the organization unit and Control Tower first. So what we'll do is we're going to go to organization, and then we're going to create a resource. We'll create an organizational unit. We're going to call it development. And then we will want it under the root, and we will add that. Okay, now that's going to take a few minutes to to deploy that organizational unit and enroll it in Control Tower. So we'll come back once that is complete. That OU has successfully deployed and has successfully registered or enrolled itself, in with Control Tower. So now what we can do, but we'll have a look at something. So what we can look at is actually Landing Zone Accelerator. When it deploys itself, it actually deploys some DynamoDB tables that it uses to keep track of its config. And if we actually have a look in this DynamoDB table, if we just explore the table, so we can see here that we've got some accounts and they've been set up and we've got some organization units, etc. Now, you'll notice that the development one is not actually there. So what we have to do is run the pipeline so that it actually detects that. So now we've created it in the OU. We then now need to add it to the configuration file, run the pipeline so that it can actually add it to that file. But what we should also be able to do at the same time is we should be able to add the same account, add the account at the same time, and see how it goes. Now I haven't tried this, so I've added accounts into OUs that are already existing, and Landing Zone Accelerator knows about them. So what we'll do is we will have a go at this. So we'll come into organizations again. So I want to add a new organization name. We'll call it development. Okay, great. So and then we'll save that. And so now that's what we have to do. Now, if we have a look at the rest of this, so this is where you label, or this is where you tell Landing Zone Accelerator what organizational units you have. And then down here, you can actually create service policies, tagging policies, and backup policies, and then associate those with the different OUs that Landing Zone Accelerator knows about. But we'll look into that in a coming video. So, all right, so we've got a development OU. Now I want to create a development account. So we'll come into here. Now, if we have a look at these account files, these are the mandatory accounts. So these get created when Landing Zone Accelerator does the installation. If you remember, during the installation, it actually asks you for the email addresses and everything of the management log archive and the audit accounts. These are the mandatory accounts. And then you add the extra accounts under the workload. Now, this is actually quite simple. What we'll do is we'll just copy this one. All you have to do is really, it's just 4 lines of code to be able to add a new account. So the first thing we need to fill in is we need to give it a name. So we want to call this one development. We're going to say this is the development account as a description. We're going to give it an email address. So we'll just give it an email address. And we want to put it into the shared services OU. Now, we're going to find out together if this works. Because I'm hoping that if we run the pipeline and commit, we'll go save. I'm hoping that if we commit these changes. So just to recap, we created the organization unit in Control Tower first. But Landing Zone Accelerator doesn't actually know about that table because the pipeline hasn't run and it hasn't updated it into its DynamoDB config table yet. And as I said, in order to get it to know about it, we need to add it into the config file for the OUs and then run it. But what I'm going to try and do here is I want to try and run a development, add the OU, and add an account, which is also going to be put in that OU in the same run of the pipeline. So I've made my changes. You can see these 2 files have been modified. So we're going to come in here and we're going to commit this to the repository. So we'll say adding development account and OU. Oops. There we go. So we're going to commit both of them. That's fine. Yes. Cool. So they've been committed. We'll now seek the changes. Great. So that's all been synced. So we will now minimize this. So now if we go back to our code commit, we should see our changes have now been synced into the repository, which they have. So we've got development OU there now. So what we'll do is we'll now come and we'll run the pipeline. So as you remember, we have the installation creates two pipelines. It creates the accelerator pipeline and the installer pipeline. So you don't really touch the installer pipeline unless you're doing an upgrade of Landing Zone Accelerator itself. So we want to trigger, so we'll come into this one, and we want to be able to pull it from the AWS code commit. And if we have a look down here, it'll build it, it'll prepare it, and then this is where it'll start looking, okay, accounts, it's going to add some accounts, it'll bootstrap anything, review, and then organization, it's going to add things down here as well. So let's do a release change. It's going to release the latest code, which is good. Cool, so that's triggered that off. So this takes a while to run because it has to run through all these pipelines. So I will pause it here and we'll return if we get any errors or if it's run successfully. So we'll see how we go, fingers crossed. We've got all the ticks down the side here, which is great. That means that the pipeline has executed successfully, which means that by adding the OU and the account at the same time was okay, it all went through. So if we now come into Control Tower, we can see, we go into Organization, so there's the development OU that we created earlier, and if we open that out, we can now see our new development account has been deployed there, which is great. And now if we check in the DynamoDB tables for Landing Zone Accelerator, we should see that the pipeline, if we go to tables and we have a look at the config, and we can see that the pipeline has now added the development OU and it's now added a development, there it is at the top, a development account. So that's how you add new accounts in using Landing Zone Accelerator and organizations. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just literally 4 lines of code to build out a new account. And then obviously from there, when you deploy new accounts, you can have service control policies, you can be able to deploy them with VPCs or any custom configuration that you like. And we'll get more deeper into that in the next upcoming videos. So thanks very much for watching. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you again soon.